Welcome to the Scariest Things podcast, your gateway to the trends and tropes of the horror genre, episode 70, Disabled Horror. And I am Eric Lee, and I am joined with
Mike Campbell
and
Liz Williams.
And
this is not disabled horror, though.
Or this is ADA horror.
This is the Americas with we are celebrating the nearly 30th anniversary.
Nearly 20th anniversary.
30th. It was passed in 1990. That would be 30 years.
We old.
Is it? Oh my gosh! You're
Yeah,
right. 30 years. Almost.
Yes. In fact, on your post, Eric, I don't want to shame you in front of America here, but you did say 19 years, and I was like, I did the math in my head, and I was like, wait a second.
No,
it's 30 years.
It's architect
Hooray!
math. You don't trust architect math, but and you know
we are celebrating the 30th, nearly 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was passed in signed into law June of 1990.
Yes,
right.
And probably the best thing that George Herbert Walker Bush managed to achieve in his tenure as president
might have been the only thing he managed to achieve, save for being a war criminal.
And he threw up on like the Prime Minister of Japan.
Oh
right?
yeah, that too. That was an achievement. So I think this is for Eric, the architect. This is one of the things where the Americans with Disabilities Act has broadened the ability for people who are either blind or deaf or disabled, or actually say paraplegic or wheelchair bound.
Sure.
But it
also includes physical and mental impairments.
Right.
That substantially limit major life activities, including walking, sitting, reading, seeing, and communicating.
So there's. I think it can be safe to say that there's a complicated relationship between horror movies and the disabled.
Oh yeah,
yes.
And I think by and large the blind get a little bit of a better break.
Sure.
I think that they often get played as the noble overachiever types, or the people who will overcome their disabilities. But for the longest time, if you were in a wheelchair, you were like you had roast chuck 100% grade A lunch meat stamped on your back. If you're in a horror movie, you did not last long. I think
no. There's
it was like you had sex in the woods or took off your shirt and took a shower in a horror movie. If you were not going to make it.
It was equivalent to being African American or having premarital sex.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's
but
there are a few notable exceptions.
But with blind people, though, I mean, I think you're right. I think there's this certain like Helen Keller kind of quality about him where the non-blind sort of revere the blind in the context of a horror film.
Yes.
Because of this super profound disability.
Yeah, and I know now. I think Mike knows I have a second rule.
Yes,
my second rule of the disparity between the antagonist and the protagonist relative to their power. Right, and nothing can be more depowering than to having a physical or a mental disability in a horror movie.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And so it's that extra level of challenge that I think makes. I think when you get a movie like A Quiet Place,
right,
or I think they've come
Bird
out
Box,
the trend of the disabled actually becoming real alpha heroes in these stories. I think it's a recent phenomena.
Although Bird Box was self-imposed blindness.
Yeah, Bird Box. Yeah,
that was blind or cover your eyes, voluntary blindness, which is a little different.
Yes,
more problematic.
That's induced disability.
So I think when I was going back, because I think Quiet Place was the thing that really caught my attention relative to this. And I recently did a post on Scariest Things, which has 25 of the movies. And remarkably, I think Mike and Liz managed to go outside of my top 25 list to find samples.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes
I went outside the list. I'm 100% outside the list. So we'll see how good my samples are, though, because you covered pretty much the big one.
Yeah. Well,
I will say though, Hollywood does not always get it right, and oftentimes Hollywood, because whether I think it's lack of consulting with people with disabilities, or Hollywood just not having, the actual life experience of dealing with somebody with disability, you end up with films like the last year's film with Stanley Tucci.
Oh,
yeah, The Silence.
Oh, it's terrible.
Which,
movie.
it's one of the worst. It was one of the worst films and one of the worst portrayals of a hearing impaired person. I don't know, maybe ever.
Yeah, part of the problem is that you can end up coming off like you're pandering.
Right.
Or you have the magical person with disabilities who's...
Or pandering, or worse yet, like they don't even try. Like Hollywood doesn't even try to capture the disability. They just kind of go, people they'll figure it out. Yeah. It's not they'll figure out this disability thing.
Right.
And they don't know what they're doing at all. Yep. Like they don't actually understand how to portray it and what constitutes like a legitimate portrayal of that disability.
Yeah. Well, then where unlike in Quiet Place, you have Millicent Simmons,
right,
who is actually a deaf actress.
Right.
And
which was awesome.
I think it's
super
one of those
awesome.
Super rare to get those kinds of roles in Hollywood. Much rarer even to get it into a horror movie.
Right.
Right.
And so hopefully we've gotten past. I did a running tally of some of these poor wheelchair bound characters who just the ground chuck that I was talking about.
Are you gonna do the Texas Chainsaw impersonation?
Franklin. God help me if you pick Texas Chainsaw Mike. That is one. I think. Although I did run across someone who defended the Texas Franklin as an ADA. Empowered in the fact that he was so irritating because everybody ignored him and didn't respect him, and therefore he's gonna be whiny. But still, he's one of the most. I think we chalked him up as one of the most annoying characters ever to exist in a horror movie.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But there was Friday the 13th Part 2, where Mark gets an axe in the face. Nightmare on Elm Street, where Will turns into a magic wizard and gets knifed by Freddy. I mean, they got it. They had it rough. Bay of Blood. Countess Frederica gets it in the first 5 minutes. Oh, yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
So now I think part of this exercise was to see if we could find some interesting takes on the disabled community and the ADA relative to horror movies. And I think let's start with Liz.
Yeah, let's start with Liz.
Okay. All right, so my 3 are completely different, and I am going to start with one
Liz, did you pick 3 different disabilities?
I do have 3 different disabilities.
All right.
Okay. So
here we go. It's on.
First, I'm going to start with a movie with a blind character, and it's one of my favorite movies. It is also horror with a lowercase h, but cheesy with a capital C.
Okay.
And... I love it. I love it so much. It is Darren Lynn Bousman's 2008 Repo the Genetic Opera.
Oh, right on. Shout out to Darren Lynn Bousman.
Yeah. Saw 3.
I love
4 and
this
5
movie, but it is a horror rock opera. So some of the songs are not going to be, it's not Hamilton, but it is really fun. And one of the characters in it, played by the amazing Sarah Brightman, who is like an award-winning soprano who with a fantastic voice. And I think she did the original like Phantom of the Opera. Mm-hmm. Her character is a character named Blind Mag, who is born blind.
Not to put too fine a point on it.
Yep, she's blind, and she was born blind, but then is given artificial eyes that kind of project holograms out of them. So the kind of quick synopsis of Repo is that it's like, I think it's like 2156. Everybody has been, people like, there's been like a plague and people's organs are shutting down. So there's like a black market organ market. And then it kind of goes legit by a family called the Rotties. And Mr. Rotti is played by Paul Sorvino, and they operate a company called Gene Co, where you can buy new organs, but if you can't pay, they repossess them. So
Repo.
They're coming back after your organs. So that could also be a little bit of a disability if everybody has organs that are shutting down and has to buy new ones. So the cast of this movie, it is written by Terrence Dunich. It starts with a Z, so I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name. I think it's
Zdunich.
Zdunich. And
Zdunich.
Darren Smith. And they had written the play and the musical, and then Darren Lynn Bousman directed it. It stars Paul Sorvino, Sarah Brightman, Anthony Head from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Paris Hilton, one of the guys from Skinny Puppy, Bill Moseley. I mean, this is
Bill
a
Moseley?
huge cast. Yeah.
Well, I know
From Three from Hell? Bill
yeah.
Moseley?
Yeah.
Well, I also know that Bousman filmed Paris Hilton's music videos. I think that was the connection.
So it is an all-star cast. The songs are great. Oh, and Alexa Vega from Spy Kids, she plays Shiloh, who is like the main character. So if you've never seen
weird
it,
cast.
this is a really
I
really
haven't
fun
seen. Have you seen
movie.
this, Eric?
I have not. Well, although it's actually because I do have the intent at one point of doing horror musicals.
Okay.
Whether it's a
Okay,
dead
well,
list or I don't know.
I
mean, it's
only
be
know
really
like
hard to
two
do
of them.
Yeah.
a discussion about it because there's maybe 10 of them and then we'd have them all covered at a certain point.
So this is also, it's available to stream on Prime if you have Prime.
Okay.
I
Shudder,
actually was lucky enough to see it when it was released. I guess they took it kind of on a tour of a few small cities, and they brought it to New Orleans at the Britannia Theater, which is a one-screen theater in our uptown area that's over 100 years old. It's one of the oldest ones left in the country. And Darren Lynn Bousman was there, Taras Zunich was there, and they kind of did a little thing before the show. So I got to see it for the first time in the theater with a whole group of people, and it was really, really fun. And since then, they've done like some tours with Devil's Carnival and the other one that they did. So I definitely recommend watching it.
I'm going to watch it.
I know this is not a great character to pick because she's blind, but then gets some eyes. But don't worry,
she see her
they don't last.
The projections that she casts out, does she actually?
I think so. I think she can see them.
Okay.
And part two question.
Yeah.
So was she disabled prior to the repossession of her eyeballs?
Yeah.
She was always disabled.
She was blind, and Gene Co gave her these.
Okay, I gotcha.
Eyes, but
okay.
She may or may not keep these eyes through the whole show.
So it's sort of enhanced disability.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think
disabled disability.
Well, because I made a point of a couple of amputee types on my top 25 list, like Ash from Evil Dead. He's got the chainsaw arm.
Yes.
And the chick from Planet Terror with the machine gun leg.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, this is.
So I'm adding Blind Mag to this.
Speaking
list.
of Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was Robert Rodriguez.
Oh, yes, that's right. He did Planet Terror, and then Tarantino did the other. Yeah.
Right. All right, Mike. So
that's it.
All right. My first film, which is on Eric's dead list. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go to thescariestthings.com, 1T, and check out the dead list of the top 25.
Yeah.
Is it 25?
25.
25, yeah. 25 films celebrating the Americans with Disabilities Act and films with disabled characters in them. I am choosing 1971 Giallo film written and directed by Dario Argento, and it stars Carl Malden. Yeah, that Carl Malden.
Tough guy extraordinaire.
James Franciscus. This, of course, is Il Gatto a Nove Code, or The Cat of Nine Tails. This film involves a newspaper reporter and a retired blind journalist who try to solve a series of killings connected to a pharmaceutical company's experimental top-secret research projects. The top-secret research projects basically involve this pharmaceutical company is doing chromosomal alteration around the XYY. In producing, of course, the extra Y chromosome creates this criminal tendency in individuals. And somehow, I'm not exactly sure how, but somehow that added chromosomal feature is a benefit to the pharmaceutical company.
Sure.
We'll just go with it. But Carl Malden, Franco Cookie, is his nickname, Arno, which is so weird because it's like dubbed in Italian and they keep going, cookie, cookie, cookie. He's a middle-aged blind man who is out walking with his niece, who I think he has sort of like parental responsibilities for. Anyway, he oversees, he overhear. Oh, does not oversee because he's blind, as I just established. He overhears a man in a parked car mentioning blackmail. They realize that as the car is getting in and out of this large medical complex that's right near their house, the following day, he reports this to the police, and a reporter, Carlo Giordani, who's played by James Franciscus, investigate the break-in of this pharmaceutical company. And of course, all sorts of craziness ensues in classic Dario Argento fashion. I'm not going to go into it because it's not a standard ABC 1, 2, 3 kind of plot.
None of Argento's things.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God, it's so twisty and so turny. And this is actually, a lot of the Argento films were pretty tight, like hour 30, hour 40. This one's a little longer, and it allows for lots more plot twists and turns.
And this is his second film, correct?
Correct. Good segue. This is the middle entry in his Animal trilogy. So his first 3 films involved they had an animal quality. Of course, we had The Bird with the Crystal Plumage and 4 Flies on Gray Velvet. And Cat o' Nine Tails doesn't really refer to, because there's no
cats.
There's no cats.
There's a cat on the cover.
There's a cat on the cover. There is really no cat in the movie, save for there is one scene where there's a sort of a chase scene through a cemetery, and of course a cat jumps out of some mausoleum or something like that.
Cat jump scares. I love cat jump scares.
That's kind of about it. The thing that's interesting about this is that there is, of course, Argento has very openly spoke about this as being one of his least favorite films of all time.
It didn't strike me as more. It seems to have a lot more of a thriller horror bent than straight up horror.
It's thriller horror. I mean, it's giallo.
Right.
So I mean, it's
bloody.
It's going to be bloody. There's going to be things, people being stabbed in the eyeball, and there's going to be sort of a mysterious kind of stalker slasher quality that runs throughout the whole film, and like all his films. But there is, if you can find it, apparently a very, very heavily edited version, a 90-minute version that was released in the U.S. on VHS, because apparently the U.S. distributors were like, this thing is way too complicated and way too long, so let's cut this thing down. Getting back to the Americans with Disabilities Act, I will say Carl Malden. I mean, Carl Malden's a great actor, but he plays a very, very believable blind person. And it's not like, where you have the actors playing the blind person where they just sort of stare off into space
and stumble around with their hands in front of them.
Yeah. Like he's like, he does a really, really solid job, and it's very believable. And his niece, of course, is always helping him, walk down the street, and he's got his cane and everything like that. And, he's not involved with any of the chase scenes or anything like that in the latter part of the film. That's, James Franciscus. He sort of takes on that role, but Carl Malden turns in a pretty stellar performance. Eric, what do you got for your number 3?
So
on your terrible trio list.
So I think when I tried to do the top 25 list, I was largely looking at protagonists. As the
not villains,
not the villains, because it's very rare that you're going to get a villain who's got the upper hand on the victims, right?
Right.
The disparity that I was talking about before. But this is the 2015 film Don't Breathe.
Oh,
I love this film.
And Stephen Lang is a total badass.
Yeah, he is. And I know, and you blathered on and on and on about this. You gotta see Don't Breathe. I was like, come on already. Yeah. Is it that good? And I watched it, and it's that good.
It's the scene is Detroit, current Detroit, and it's blighted. I think it's
but like post 2008 economic meltdown Detroit,
Yeah.
And so this was
where houses are going for free.
Yeah, I mean, I have a colleague of mine who is he's a Detroit native, and he was pointing to huge sections of the city that you can buy a house for $1,000.
Right.
Yep. A giant house.
Yeah. Just squat.
And and it's probably not even worth that much.
Right.
I mean, these poor houses are just dilapidated and weed infested. and this is a story of three burglars
Right.
who are looking to try and get one last big score because they keep on getting rooked out by their handler.
But they're trying to get out of Detroit too.
They're trying to get out of
They're
Detroit.
trying to make the
one-
last score to get out.
And so it's Rocky, Alex, and Money.
Money.
Rocky is Jane Levy. Alex
I love
is
her.
Dylan
She's so
Minnette.
good.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
And so is Dylan Minnette.
And Money, Daniel Zovato plays the overconfident tough guy, a streetwise guy who's, I think cocky and telling these guys, listen, there's a blind guy. He's an old vet and he's got $1 million stashed in his house, and word is he hasn't moved it. And since the one of them had the passcode to get into the house because his dad owns a security company. And that's how.
That's right. That's right.
Burglars.
Yep.
And so they had the passkey. It's like, this will be really easy. He's like, we'll just go in, we'll take it, and what's he gonna do?
Right.
Right.
He's blind.
He's blind. He's
Yeah.
helpless. He's anything but.
Yep.
And he is.
If Carl Malden was the blind guy, I would say they made the score.
Yeah. Carl Malden was like, what was that?
Hey, huh? I'm going back to bed.
And this is it's a super claustrophobic movie. And
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
And like A Quiet Place, you find the audience is holding their breath because
for sure.
you feel like if you make a sound, the blind guy, and then he doesn't have a name. Stephen Lang's character doesn't have a name. He's just the blind man. And that he will come down and then he will catch you and break your neck.
What's he credited as in the film?
He's credited as the blind man.
Really?
Yes.
Not even with Michael Myers where he's the shape.
No,
It's just the blind man.
It's the blind man.
Okay.
And there are, for good portions of the movie, it's questionable, because it's his home that's being invaded, and
Right.
and these kids have
That's a great plot device. That is a great twist where it's like who's the villain, who's the hero. Are the kids actually doing the break-in the hero?
but at a key moment in the movie,
There's a pretty big twist in this movie.
And-
Spoiler alert.
I'm not going to spoil.
Okay, no spoiler alert.
No,
But
no.
I think
The hero villain construct gets flipped.
and you realize that the blind man is no good.
Yeah.
And all that more terrifying. And you will never look at a turkey baster again.
Not
It's
only
horrifying.
no good.
Yeah, it's just
Maybe
like,
we got to come up with
Pretty bad. Yeah.
a better
Better
adjective than
he's a
not
sick
no
bastard.
good. Yes, there you go. Sick bastard.
Who's also a muscle-bound freak.
He's the
and,
king of the sick bastards.
and really, really attuned to his own living situation.
Oh.
And you trap the couple of burglars in the basement and take the lights out, you're on his turf now. So, anyways, this was as Mike explained, a movie that I was all lathered up about back a few years ago.
Eric was sweaty.
Yeah,
I
Sweaty.
agree. This was one of, I think, when did this come out, Eric? Did you say
2015.
What year is
I'm
it?
sorry, 2000. I apologize.
15,
2016.
okay.
16.
16, yeah,
16.
the next year. So,
And this came out, I think, the same year as Green Room. So these two back to back were
yeah.
oh my god,
Yeah, Green Room's
what
good.
is going on? Like amazing young actors and actresses, and just like really super creative stories. But this one, took my breath away, huh? Don't breathe like that.
Hey, I like it.
I loved it.
Bring those
I
puns
loved it.
back. Although we should
thought
probably
that,
we should probably note that blind people are not tantamount to Nazi skinheads in the case of Green Room.
No. But like it was just the same kind of. They came out,
yeah.
I think, within a few weeks of each other,
Right.
and it was just like those were two amazing
intense.
movies to see in the theater, and intense movies, and really
totally, yeah.
upped the bar.
So yeah,
what
so
was
Fede
going on.
Alvarez. Apparently, they are making a sequel.
What?
Yeah, I'm kind of
yeah.
dubious about that. I don't know when it's coming out. I haven't seen much more press about it. I know that it's been greenlit because it made a lot of money.
You know,
Yeah.
the one scene though that really like threw me was when she I won't say there's Rottweilers
Yes.
Yeah.
that's super intense.
Yes.
Rottweiler's chasing the main character, and that's a very intense scene.
Yeah, it is
and it also, you get out of the claustrophobia, and you get to see like how demolished Detroit really is.
It's remarkably blighted.
Yeah. All right, Liz.
Great pick. Okay, this one might be a little bit of a stretch. I wanted to go with not a physical disability, but a mental disability, but not someone who's mentally disabled. This is something that was caused by a trauma.
Okay.
So this one is 1987, and it's Angel Heart.
Interesting.
So this is directed by Alan Parker. It's based on a book. I didn't know that, by William Fjorsberg. And it stars Mickey Rourke.
Right.
Free wrestler face. A moment of silence for that beautiful face.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro and Lisa Bonet.
Who still looks the same.
Lisa Bonet.
Yeah, oh, God, I
Lisa
wish.
Bonet.
She looks
also
the same. I thought you
Mrs.
said
Jason
he still
Momoa.
looks the same.
Yes.
Yeah. She's incredibly beautiful. Mickey Rourke at this time was incredibly beautiful.
Not so much anymore.
I think they refer
Not
to
so
her
much
as
anymore.
They refer to her as the Queen of Atlantis now.
Yes, probably.
I think.
So this is the story of Harry Angel, who is a private detective who is hired by Robert De Niro's character named Louis Cypher to find a guy who owes him and didn't complete his contract, who is a musician named Johnny Favorite. So
Mickey Rourke.
Harry Angel
is
is
Mickey
Mickey Rourke.
Right.
And he's hired to find Johnny Favorite.
That's right.
So he starts interviewing people, and everybody that he interviewed about Johnny Favorite ends up meeting a horrible demise. But he finds out that this guy was a soldier in World War II and had been in a hospital and being treated for like really bad shell shock. So that's where my disability is coming in.
Interesting.
And so they're doing some intense treatments on him. And it takes he finds out he's been checked out of this hospital by two people, and it takes him down to New Orleans. So Angel Heart was filmed here. And of course, there's some voodoo. And Johnny Favorite is kind of a practitioner of black magic. And when he's down here in the bayou, he meets Lisa Bonet, who is a character named Epiphany Proudfoot. And of course,
these character names are so good.
You know what I like about the character names? It's like they were like, well, this is going to sound really ridiculous and kind of cheesy, but let's go for it.
Louis Cypher.
Like, who cares?
So, other things that Johnny Favorite was dealing with was amnesia with his shell shock. He couldn't remember things, and like horrible facial trauma. So
ironic.
If you find out, it is ironic. So when you combine, that with black magic and voodoo and a series of murders following Harry as he investigates everybody, I'm not going to spoil it, but this movie is from 1987. So I think a lot of people know what the twist is. But
when was the last time you checked in on this movie?
Probably a couple years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Because I don't think I've watched it since it came out, and I'm wondering, is it dated? Like, it's got to be.
It's a little dated.
Yeah, it's got to be dated to 1987.
It's
lots of soft focus. And
Alan Parker's has a certain style about his stuff.
Right.
He's
and I think the last time I watched it was when we were like people talking about things that were filmed in New Orleans. With some friends, and just seeing how some get it right, some get it wrong. Mm-hmm. This one, not everybody lives in a shack on the bayou and practices voodoo. So
What? Come on, Liz. I think that's what we did all week when we were down.
Why were you making Eric dismantle those chickens in the backyard?
Yeah, it was
in a circle. Yeah. God damn it! Circle.
That was weird.
So. That's my choice. Shell shock. I'm calling that shell shock and amnesia as a disability because it prohibits the characters from functioning at full force.
I almost went with Jacob's Ladder. I mean, that would have been another one.
Yeah, that would have been another one.
PTSD.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. All right, my number 2 on my terrible trio list is from the George A. Romero. This is
yes.
Monkey Shines, an experiment in fear, also known as Monkey Shines. This
I
is
love Monkey
This is,
Shines.
yes, going back to the late 1980s. This is 1988. This is a horror film. Stars Jason Beghe as Alan Mann, who's an athlete who becomes paralyzed quadriplegic, and develops a bond with a service monkey named Ella, who essentially becomes dangerously overprotective. He is out for a run one morning, gets hit by a delivery truck, and he's a promising track athlete, and he becomes a quadriplegic. And so part of the film is him dealing with his disability, and it's also part of the film is kind of like
Bonding with a telepathic monkey.
Bonding with a telepathic monkey, and it also involves his good buddy Jeffrey Fisher, played by John Pankow, who's a scientist friend of his who has been experimenting with the injection of human brain tissue into capuchin monkeys. And of course, he decides to one of the monkeys mysteriously, I'm using mysteriously in air quotes, disappears from the lab. And of course, that monkey is the one that ends up with him. And he, of course, claims that the monkey had died. He didn't do the proper documentation on the death of that monkey. But then that monkey, of course, ends up with Alan, and Alan develops this very, very, very tight bond with Ella the monkey. But of course, as Ella begins to develop feelings with him, she starts to experience rage and hatred,
because he's a frustrated man.
He's very frustrated. Now, the thing I will say about him as an actor playing a quadriplegic, it's actually fairly believable. I mean, there's no point at which I watched him and I went, oh, this doesn't look that right. Because I mean, they basically put him in a wheelchair, and then he's using a whole series of mouth devices to kind of move the wheelchair and or to, call for Ella and or, to use various commands throughout the house. The film really, I think it's a really solid film. It was kind of a far cry for George Romero. In fact, this was one of his first Hollywood. This was his major Hollywood studio debut, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. It was shot in Pittsburgh because, of course, George Romero insisted everything be shot in Pittsburgh. The film's distributor, Orion Pictures,
RoboCop.
They were desperate for a hit at that point in the late 80s because apparently they were like financially sunk. And initially, they, of course, focus grouped the hell out of the film. They forced George Romero to choose a happy ending for the film. Yeah. That didn't work. And then they recut it without even telling him and put in a shocker ending. Of course, he was like insanely pissed about. The film, like by all accounts, was way, 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 way too long, and George Romero just couldn't figure out a way to edit it down. So the studio edited it down for him. And so, that was this resulted, of course, in about like 50% of the shot footage hit the cutting room floor. And
did they ever reshoot or produce a director's cut of this one?
I don't believe they have shot a director's cut, although, and I'm not sure if you can get it like on the extras in the Blu-ray or the DVD set, but you can watch an alternative ending, which involves the other character I didn't mention, Stephen Root,
yes,
of course, from Office Space and a million other things.
Stapler Man.
Stapler Man. And Janine Turner is in the film too. I should have mentioned that from Northern Exposure as well. And he plays the lead or the director of the Monkey Research Center, and there is a weird. It sounds kind of interesting, and I have not checked out to see if I can find the alternate ending. But essentially, he unwittingly psychically links himself with all the monkeys in the.
He gets mobbed by
a band
telekinetic monkeys
a band of telekinetic
I've never
monkeys.
seen this one, but I feel, is this the one that I think I remember the VHS that had one of those like stuffed monkeys that has those symbols on the front of
that's
it?
the one.
Yeah,
Indeed.
Yeah,
but he's holding a razor blade.
Ella the monkey is adorable, though. She's both frightening and adorable.
I'm sure those little monkeys are adorable.
And I would say that this is Romero's most sort of personal feeling movie, or it seems like very.
For sure.
This and maybe Martin.
Yeah.
Right? It's not. He's not trying to go out there and say something grand and epic about society. It's really focused on the plight of this individual and how he copes with his condition and how he copes with his mental anguish as much as his physical disability. I think it handles it in a very sophisticated way, I thought.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, George Romero, I think he knew what he was doing. I think. But at the same time, in dealing with that kind of personal story, he had a great deal of difficulty in
trimming it down
into something reasonable.
Yeah, and sadly to say, it was not a big hit.
No,
that Orion was hoping for.
The budget was $7 million. The box was $5.3 million. So
yeah, no Monkey Shines 2.
Didn't do so well. There was not a Monkey Shines 2. At least I don't think so.
Not officially. It's kind of like The Ruins 2,
right?
Which apparently has an unofficial.
There is a Ruins 2, allegedly, according to our man.
Yeah.
All right, what do you got, Eric, for your number 2? Speaking of twos.
So my number 2 is Hush.
Yeah, that's the stuff.
It's
that is the stuff.
Intense. This is a movie directed by Mike Flanagan, who also did Gerald's Game, which I think feels a lot like this movie.
Yep.
And he's like a Netflix darling right now, and I am liking what he's been doing.
The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
Shout out for Liz.
Love it. I love Gerald's Game too, and I love this movie. I think
he did a little film called Oculus.
Nah, we're not going to talk about that one.
And
talk about when he went to Netflix.
And he will be doing Dr. Sleep, but
he's doing Dr. Sleep.
So this is. It felt like this could be a stage play.
The Shining 2.
Because what we have here is a deaf woman, and I'm going to IMDb this here quickly because I didn't write this down. Nothing
Intrepid research.
Professionalism.
Yeah,
where's Ernie?
Come on,
I know.
It's Katie Siegel.
Katie Siegel, thank you.
Is she a actual deaf actress?
No, she's not.
No. Okay.
But
she plays Maddie Young.
Yeah, and it is. I think this one plays up on the fact of how easy it is, or the disability to sneak up on somebody,
right?
Or someone who's deaf, and I think
sneaking up on people is not recognized under the ADA.
No. It's like we will have ways to, but actually, but there are some of the things that play into her condition that she uses to give her notifications about, how a smoke alarm works, how her telephone works.
Oh
and those kinds of elements actually are things that the ADA.
Yeah, those are like reasonable accommodations.
And she actually manages to use these things effectively as tools to defend herself from a crazy stalker killer who is he butchers one of her good friends very early in the movie.
Her next door neighbor.
You get the introduction of Maddie and her neighbor,
right?
And she's.
And it's pretty it's actually kind of touching because the neighbor is trying to learn how to sign to better communicate with Maddie.
And
which is kind of like it's a very simple plot device that that creates this bond between the two characters. So you actually kind of are invested in the neighbor.
It's enough to convince you of Maddie's condition.
Right. Oh yeah, 100%.
And if you weren't told that Katie Segal was not a deaf woman, she sold it to me.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Least.
Yeah.
And you get to learn sign language for bitch.
Yeah. So, I thought one of the things that might have happened during the movie was that the killer shows up in a smiling mask, right?
Yeah.
And for a while there, I thought that we might end up with a situation where nobody's saying anything to anybody. But when he takes, he isn't he's brazen. This guy is willing. He will do some villain monologuing. And it's John Gallagher who was on not broadcast news. What was the network? I think.
Okay.
And I was like, that guy, you're not scary at all. But then but he is cocky and he's relentless and he's smart. I mean, he manages to. There's a lot of this is a very cat and mouse kind of a thing.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And I think there were some.
He's smart. She's equally smart.
Yes, and so
if not maybe a little smarter.
Yeah.
No, and there were some real touching moments where she feels like I have to, and you hear this inner monologue. It's like if I try and run, and you see the visions of what happens to her if she tries to run.
Here's the thing I didn't like about the inner monologue.
What's that?
If I can interject for a second, because early on in the film, she talks about how the only voice she can hear in her head, she's incapable of hearing herself in her head anymore, and she can only hear her mother. But then when they play
it's her
inner monologue, it's her voice, and I'm like,
well, maybe that's like the situation bringing back herself.
Oh yeah, I guess that could be.
Well, and she could hear herself again because she has to rely on herself to get out of this situation.
Yeah,
and this is where it sort of reminds me of Gerald's Game, where all of a sudden your lead protagonist is actually you get a duplicate image of her, and she's going, no, if you try and run, he's going to cut you down. If you try and hide, you're going to bleed out. You've got to fight.
Right.
And once she makes that decision to fight, and how she chooses to do it. I mean, he's not. He doesn't fall into a bunch of bumbling villain traps.
Right.
And it is a really tense movie from the 10-minute mark to the finish line. It's not a very long movie. I think it's about a 90-minute movie.
Yeah.
I found it really compelling, and I thought it was an empowering movie for a deaf protagonist. And
for sure.
And it didn't, because I think there was a movie, Mia Farrow, 1971, that I talked about. Oh shoot! I'll have to go back to my
get into the Wayback Machine.
But sometimes you get to play. You're a helpless victim, and you are at the mercy of needing someone to come rescue you. She didn't need any rescuing.
No,
she was.
What's great?
Prime final girl.
The other thing I thought was really clever about the film too was that it's a house in the woods that is all windows. Like it is like everything is a window, and you go, why the hell doesn't he break open the window? Well, he explains to you why he doesn't actually break open the window, and so it allows the film to extend out for another hour. Because otherwise, why don't you just like pound through the window, unlock the door, and then do whatever you needed to do to this person? But no, he wants to
drag it out. He's
He's
a villain monologuing.
Yes,
again.
he's villain monologuing,
and he probably we'll let you watch the movie and
a little
see
too
what
much
happens.
James Bond there.
Yes.
All right, Liz, what do you got for your number one on your terrible trio list?
So this is one of the weirdest movies I have ever seen, and this is
do it.
A character who becomes disabled in the film. And this is the 2014 Kevin Smith film, Tusk.
Oh!
Yeah.
So,
walrusitis as disability.
I think you have seen
he's going to need a ramp.
Yeah, he's going to need a ramp. So
and a swimming pool.
This story is... it's so weird.
I got a soft spot for this movie. It is so.
I rewatched it again today, and when the movie comes on, it says like based on true events. So I know that's just like a hilarious thing because all of them say like based on true events. But so this is the movie about a podcaster played by Justin Long, who has a podcast called the Not See party,
Yeah.
not C, like not Nazi,
Yeah, wink,
Notsee, yeah, with his pal, played by Haley Joe Osment, where Justin Long goes and experiences things and tells his friend about them on the podcast because Haley Joel Osment is afraid to fly or travel. So this gets set up with... They're talking about this kid who they call him the Kill Bill kid. It was a kid who cut off his own leg with a samurai sword. So Justin Long is going to Canada to interview this kid. When he gets there, Kill Bill kid has killed himself with his own samurai sword. So Justin Long doesn't really care about that. He's just pissed that he has nothing for his podcast, and now he's stuck in Canada for a night. So he's in this bar and sees this like a kind of room for rent sign, but it's in the bathroom, and it's this thing talking about an old seafarer, and if you come stay in this room, you'll get a story that will like make it worth your while, and it's the story of a lifetime. So of course he goes there, and so there is this like gentleman who is in a wheelchair, played by Michael Parks, and he was a seaman who was on this ship called the Alexandria, and he goes overboard and is rescued by like a magical walrus creature named Mr. Tusk. So Justin Long, this is the story that he's telling to Justin Long. So he's like, oh yeah, this is definitely going to be a great story for my podcast. But while he's sitting there having the story told to him, he's drinking this tea. And of course, don't accept tea from a strange old seafarer, I guess, because next thing you know, he falls over and he is out cold. So he wakes up the next day and he's like, oh my God, what happened? And the guy says, oh, there was a spider on you. You got a spider bite. It was a brown recluse and it like knocked you out. And he's like, really? And he's like, well, I can't feel my legs. So
that's because they're not legs,
alert,
they're flippers.
One of them's gone and his leg is gone. So we've started with just one leg. So now Justin Long is also in a wheelchair freaking out. And the guy tells him that he has been working on a walrus suit to recreate the magical Mr. Tusk who had rescued him. And he thinks the walrus suit will fit Justin Long just perfectly. So he's going to cut off his legs, put him in this walrus suit that is made of human skin, and turn him into a walrus.
Yeah. Kevin Smith takes a lot of heat for this movie, but I think this movie is all kinds of awesome.
If that's not weird enough, Johnny Depp shows up as a French-Canadian inspector named Guy Lapointe, who has been investigating these disappearances that are the people who have made up this walrus suit. So hijinks and weirdness and grotesque body horror ensue in this movie. And it sounds like I've spoiled it. I have not. This is the first 15 minutes of the film. It is oh God, it's so gross and hard to look at. And I just can't.
And yet,
sometimes you sit back and you're like, how did this get made? Like, who said, like, yes? I guess Kevin Smith has enough clout at the time that this one got made. But yeah, he has taken some shit for this.
It almost sounds like
weird.
It almost sounds like a dare. Like somebody went, as they said, I bet you can't. Yes, you can't make a film about the following things. And he said, "You want to bet?
You want to bet? I can make it gross."
Mad scientist, kind of almost human centipede level, kind of nasty.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, transformation of man to walrus. Can you imagine
the
walrus man?
It is bonkers. And this one is also available for streaming on Netflix. If you feel like, after you listen to the podcast, give it a whirl.
You should.
I don't think you'll regret it. It is. You'll never see anything else like it.
No.
I don't know if I like it or not, but it is definitely one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen.
Yeah. Capital B body horror.
Yeah.
And two guys in wheelchairs, so completely appropriate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
All right. My number one is a film that I called Pure Brilliance, Elegant Simplicity. Well, if Regency Pictures came to me and asked me for a pull quote, that's the blurb I would use because it's true. This is the 2018 film with Claire Foy, Unsane.
Yeah.
Oh, you did love this.
Yeah, this is a film that was shot by Steven Soderbergh entirely on an iPhone 7 that stars Claire Foy, Jay Farrow, formerly of Saturday Night Live, and the Amy Irving. I talked a little bit about Unsane last year when at the end of last year when we were covering our favorite movies.
Your top 10 of the year.
Yeah, it made my top 10. Yeah, and it's a film that involves, in this case, a mental disability. She is clearly a person, Claire Foy. I think she works for a financial firm. She is very stressed out. She is having a difficult time at work. There is, of course, just the crush of work-related and social pressures. She talks to her mom, Amy Irving, who suggests, hey, maybe it's time to go to the hospital, check with a counselor, make sure everything's okay. She goes in and she is, again, I'm using air quotes, voluntarily committed into a booby hatch at this hospital. And of course, this film is not so much, a film about mental illness as much as it is a very sly and coy way that Steven Soderbergh sort of picks apart the disparity and problems associated with the American healthcare system. I mean, it's really a metaphor for everything in this country that is wrong with healthcare. She, of course, is the unwitting dupe who has to deal with both being voluntarily committed to a nut house where she may or may not be nuts,
right?
And she's having to deal with the pitfalls, trials, and tribulations of the American healthcare system. It's a great film. Jay Farrow plays one of the fellow sort of inmates in the booby hatch. I realize booby hatch is probably not an appropriate term, considering we're talking about the Americans with Disabilities
Nut
Act.
house.
Nut house is probably not appropriate
bin.
either. Yes, loony bin isn't either.
Psychiatric facility is, I think, what you're looking
facility.
for.
Thank
Rehabilitation
you.
center.
Thank you. Yeah. It's a film that is, as I say, it operates on a bunch of different levels.
It really does. You're questioning her the whole time too.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. You're thinking to yourself, is she crazy?
Right.
And then you're thinking, is the system crazy? And then, of course, the film, I'm not going to spoil the film. I'm not going to go into it. If you do want to read my review at scariestthings.com, 1T, you can go read it there.
To dig deep. I mean, it's one of Mike's earlier reviews.
Yeah.
But I think this shows off Soderbergh's skill as a screenwriter.
Oh, yeah.
In addition to his ability to capture a frame, which he has, since Sex, Lies, and Videotape, has always been able to do. This was
capturing a frame on
iPhone.
On iPhone 7.
Granted, I love the pictures of him on his camera rig, which has got like a full dolly track, and it's just this little teeny camera.
Right.
And then a bunch of guys with a bunch of boom mics. I mean, it wasn't the audio didn't come from that, but all of the actual video was an iPhone,
yeah.
which is
that in and of a
freaky challenge.
Yeah, that's amazing because it looks like a really, really good film.
Yeah, although it's one of the things that when I was going through my top 25 list, if
noticed this film didn't make the list.
Well, and here's the thing,
explain yourself now.
There is if the disabled in the physical disability realm have had a problematic with horror movies, the psychologically troubled people in horror movies.
That's every horror film.
Yeah.
And so trying to dig
from
through,
Wrong Turn to Texas Chainsaw
and
to
Psycho
everything else in between. The reason
Dr. Jekyll.
Yes, I agree with that. The reason I did choose this is because it specifically deals with mental illness in the context of a hospital and
the healthcare system.
The healthcare system.
No, it's still a great selection.
Yeah.
And because you could go on for a top 100 of the insane. And then the tricky question becomes, in what cases is it used well, in an empowering way, or in a way that isn't demeaning to the person who's got the mental illness? And frankly, we love it when there's a crazy axe wielding murderer as your antagonist. But I think something like, and that's where Jacob's Ladder comes in,
right?
And that's that's where
Unsane,
and there's any of these, am I, or what was the one, the Polanski movie, Repulsion?
Oh, yeah.
Another
Repulsion.
one,
Yeah.
which I loved.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
Yeah.
All right. Get to your number one.
Okay, so my number one, this is from last year, and actually, here's another one where it's like, oh God, I can't believe I forgot to put this on my list. But the most kick-ass quadriplegic character ever to appear on a movie screen, and that is Upgrade. Directed by Lee Whannell, starring Logan Marshall Green, where he is. It's the near future, say maybe 10 years from now or 15 years from now, as technology is advancing and they're coming up with, automated cars are the way of the road now, and medical upgrades are happening. He ends up he's the victim of an armed robbery, and he gets his wife is killed.
Right.
And he is shot in the back and left paraplegic or quadriplegic. And one of his acquaintances, and through work, he's an automobile old school, gas powered car kind of a thing, a mechanic, and one of his contacts comes back and says, "Remember this chip that I was telling you about? I can get you to walk again, and better than that, I can make you better. I can make you a human 2.0,
right,
with this chip." The thing is that this chip communicates with him, and he all of a sudden he goes full on Neo from the Matrix and becomes as he starts. He goes, all of a sudden he learns kung fu, and it is just this. Him versus the gang that killed his wife and left him quadriplegic, and he's taking it out on him in this amazing martial arts kind of stuff. So it's kind of science fiction-y, but it's also hugely bloody. And then but it's got a big mad scientist twist to it,
right?
Where that you learn that who's in charge. Is he in charge of his body, or is the chip in charge of it? And there's a point where all of a sudden he wants to that in order to make more discoveries, he's having to cede more of his body functions over to this chip. So and then all of a sudden it starts making him do things that he may not necessarily want to do. And it is watching Logan Marshall Green gave one of the great performances in the genre last year, because what you see is a man who's looks like he's
very
not in
handsome.
His own. He's not his own acting of his own volition. Like his head and his eyes are saying one thing, and his body's doing something completely different. It is how he managed to pull that off was amazing, and the kind of the Hong Kong style action sequences, and there's like shotguns that are built into their arms, and then there's like it's action.
I think the moral to the story is don't trust auto mechanics.
Right. Or don't trust a guy who's going to say, "I got this chip that
I got this chip."
To
Eric,
make you better.
did you catch this one at Overlook last year?
Yes, I did.
Okay, cool.
This was I saw that. So I saw the I think it was the U.S. premiere of it.
Yes.
At Overlook, and Lee Whannell was there to receive the big Lifetime Achievement Award. And he's
cool.
great. He's fascinating. So if you don't know, Lee Whannell did the
stuff with James Wan,
Saw
Conjuring
movies. Yeah,
Right.
And
Yeah.
Conjuring,
Yeah.
And so he actually starred in Saw as one of the victims. So now he's going on, and it's this nice low budget thing that looks like it cost a ton of money, and it's fun. It is
fun.
It is a lot of fun. So check that out.
Let's get to grave digging. Let's get to grave digging. And speaking of Saw, I want to talk a little bit about the grave digging I'm doing today. Involves James Wan, and word has it, as of today,
breaking news.
Rumor is that after Aquaman 2, he is coming back to the horror genre.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
And they're really making Aquaman 2. That's what's most surprising about this.
Or Aquaman 2 is coming back as a horror movie.
Yeah.
Which is good, but there's no details.
Okay.
which is
We don't need
bad.
details.
Is he? Doing
But
it
he's
through
working with
Blumhouse?
his fiance Ingrid Bissu, who worked on The Nun, which is also bad. But James Wan is coming back to horror, which is
Probably
good.
good. I think more.
So there's a
more
lot of
good than bad.
there's a mixed bag in there somewhere. But the fact that he's coming back to horror is good. The DC films are a little video gamey. Read a
Have you seen
lot.
Swamp Thing yet?
A lot video gamey. I've not seen Swamp Thing
Swamp
yet.
Thing is awesome.
Yeah.
Swamp Thing is it's channeling John Carpenter. It's
Sure.
really fun.
Yeah. So hopefully it'll be something good. We will have to wait. So
Okay.
check back with us at thescariestthings.com.
Okay.
Eric, what do you got for your grave digging?
Well, this is sort of a two-parter because first off, I want it's a farewell to Rutger Hauer,
oh, yeah.
who passed away last week at the age of 75 due to an illness. He is the Hitcher.
Yes.
He's been a vampire many times over. He was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer and
Right.
True Blood, Dracula 3D, Dracula 3 Legacy, Salem's Lot, the
Yes.
2004 version. He was in the thriller The Osterman Weekend, and Hobo with a Shotgun.
Which was also Sam Peckinpah,
Yeah.
the Osterman Weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hobo with a Shotgun is awesome.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's
awesome.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was
And
part
he
of
was just oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Liz.
He was just in the most recent season, or I guess the last season of Channel Zero on Sci-Fi, which
Yeah,
is like a
right,
horror
yeah.
thing.
He was very busy up to the
it's creepy.
to when he got sick.
Yeah.
He's and I think most recognized for Roy Batty in Blade Runner, which was that fantastic monologue, which goes on the all-time list of monologues in movies.
Although not very quotable. Somebody like after he had passed, somebody characterized that as quotable, and I was like,
No, you can mangle that one pretty easily.
That's
I mean,
not really like Caddyshack is quotable. That is not.
His was
not
poetry.
quotable. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
But what I was going to say is that there is a film festival in Fort Lauderdale, and it's coming up this week, and it's Popcorn Frights. We have covered Popcorn Frights. We actually have a bunch of reviews that are queued up that we have an embargo on, so you'll see those reviews coming up. I think beginning August the 8th, I think, is when the festival kicks off. One of the movies is called The Sonata, which is one of Rutger Hauer's last movies.
Oh, cool.
And so we have
Cool.
we've gotten a screener for that. I believe Robert is covering
Cool.
The Sonata for us.
Very good.
So as a farewell gesture and as a way, because we at the Scariest Things always like to promote festivals.
Yes.
Go to Popcorn Frights, where our friends Mark and Igor have been very good at helping us out with getting some advanced films. Last year they had a fantastic selection of movies. We have, rather than blather on about that right now, there's a full roster of them on scariestthings.com. You can check it out. But end of this week.
All right,
guys.
Liz, you got anything for grave
Yep.
digging for us?
I'll do real quick since I'm a TV junkie, and please read my top 10
Yeah.
TV shows from
great.
the UK and Europe, working on one for America, or for US and our neighbors to the north. That should be up soon. But two of my favorite horror shows from last year are coming back I think in the next 2 weeks. The first is season 2 of The Terror,
Yes.
which they're
Yeah.
actually doing in a Japanese internment camp.
Isn't
So
George Takei in that?
What?
I don't know. Yes, he is in it, and he survived that.
He was
But
actually,
so I really like how they
I want to see that.
take something real and true and historical and put a ghostly twist on it. And the second thing is also based on true stuff and a little bit, well, I'm not going to say grimmer than a Japanese internment camp, but it's still grim. It's season 2 of Mindhunter on Netflix, which is based on the 2 FBI agents who really gave birth to criminal profiling and spent a lot of time interviewing the most horrible serial killers in order to come up with the profiling process for the FBI. And it stars
Yuck.
Jonathan Groff, and it is really, really good. If you're a person who's into true crime, definitely check out season 1 of Mindhunter and then get ready for season 2 because it's probably going to be insane.
So turn off this podcast, go turn on your TV.
Go turn on your TV.
And then
So
turn off
easy.
your TV and then come back to the podcast.
And then go to the web, and then go to the website and then get ready for the next podcast.
You can just stay up all night binging. You have our approval.
We
All
got
right.
you covered.
I'm going to take us out with not a tagline per se, as much as it is a poem.
I know what it is.
Oh.
Do it.
It's the poem from Monkey Shines.
Yes.
Once there was a man whose prison was a chair. The man had a monkey. They made the strangest pair. The man was the prisoner. The monkey held the key. No matter how he tried, the man couldn't flee. Locked in his prison, terrified and frail, the monkey kept gaining power, keeping him in jail. The man tried to keep the monkey from his brain, but every move he made became the monkey's game. The monkey ruled the man. It climbed inside his head. And now, as fate will have it, one of them is dead.
Dead.
Ba, ba, ba.
I love that poem.